Could it be? With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2025 NFL Draft Prospects 101 series, your guide to some of the biggest and hottest names of the 2025 NFL Draft. We are talking cornerbacks, and I'm going to be fully transparent with you. I do not love this crop of cornerbacks. This is a very underwhelming class, if you ask me. You're banking on upside, and generally, when we're talking prospects, you're banking on upside anyhow. But I'm told you I'm more of a practical guy. I need to see it. And with a lot of these corners, I don't see it. I don't see how they get to the next level and become these dynamite, playmaking corners. You could see it in the last, 5 drafts or so. You could see it with especially those first round guys. I don't even see it necessarily with the first round guys. I don't love this group of corners. As a matter of fact, here's an interesting tidbit. Of the top 15 corners for me in this year's draft class, none of them exceed 200 pounds. That's right. Not a single corner in this draft class that I have in my top 15 exceed 200 pounds. Now, it's not a big deal, right? Like, you don't have to be 200 pounds. Most really good corners in the league probably aren't 200 pounds, but a lot of the really good ones are 200 pounds. And it's just funny to see all of these guys coming into the league, yet none of them, these receivers are getting bigger, stronger, faster every year. And to combat that, you need bigger, stronger, faster corners. And these guys are all light in the trunks, right? So to me, there are no Derek Stingley Juniors in this draft. To me, there are no Sauce Gardners in this draft. To me, there are no PS2s in this draft. To me, there aren't any of those guys that you look at and say, there's no Quinyon Mitchell in this year's draft class. I don't see it with this group. That's just me. That said, 1 or 2 of these guys are going to come out of this draft and end up being really good. That's the nature of how this usually works. But good luck figuring out who those guys are. I think I know maybe 1 or 2 of them. But you got guys coming off of injuries, that kind of stuff. You got guys with not a ton of experience. You got guys that are in this group that are, 25 years old and been in college football for 6 years. And I mean, it's all kinds of craziness here. And so the hope is they'll maximize their talents and their skill set and be able to produce at a high level at the NFL level. But keep your fingers crossed if you need a cornerback this year. I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Anyway, let's get to my list. I don't want to talk your head off. I'm going to give you my corners from 15 down to 8 today. And then tomorrow we will clean up the cornerback class 7 all the way down to my number 1 corner. So let's start this list with my 15th corner in this draft. UCF's BJ Adams, 6'2", 182 pounds, ran a 4.53 at the combine. Now, reportedly, he cleaned that up and ran a 4.46 at his pro day. I don't believe you. I need more people. However, good for him. I liked his competitiveness on tape. Very active corner. Gets after people at the line of scrimmage very aggressively. Longer limbs. Gets in your space. It gets in your face, deletes the airspace. Wants to be aggressive and handsy. Sometimes I feel like he can be a little bit of that down the field as well. Not a ton of ball production. Don't love that. 2 interceptions in his career. But and he will tackle, but he doesn't want to, right? If he doesn't have to, he won't. But if he has to, he will. Now, it's not like he won't tackle at all. But he's one of those guys that if you don't need me, I'm not going to mess around with it. But I'm here if you need me. So I don't necessarily love that either. But I do like, and I'll tell you this, this is one of the things that are very impressive about this particular crop of corners is their eyes are great. These guys, a lot of these corners are really good underneath. They're extremely twitchy when it comes to click and close ability. They see it, they drive on it. Now that can be a gift and a curse, because on one hand, your eyes take you to the football. You're able to click and close, get there, take it away, go the other way, pick six, whatever the case may be. But it also can make you very susceptible to double moves and things over the top. So that's something to keep in mind. And BJ Adams is a guy that I think does a really good job of shrinking the distance between him and the receiver, especially underneath. As you go deeper down the field, I think he does a really good job of staying connected. Does he always find the football? No, which is why you see the low ball production. But I think he does a really good job of staying connected. He does a really good job of, I think, using his physicality to disrupt the timing of routes. And that's something that really plays into his strengths because, again, he's not the fastest guy in the world. So his length, his physicality, his ability to stay connected, he's a little bit handsy, but ultimately he's a guy that I see as a very high-level competitor at the cornerback position. And that's something you got to covet at corner, is a guy that's highly competitive. You're going to get beat. But you want the challenge. I watched him go up against Travis Hunter, right? He wanted that challenge of going up against Travis Hunter. I enjoyed watching him do that, right? Who else did I see him go up against? I think he went up against, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the games I watched, I think he went up against Jalen Noel and Jalen Higgins as well. So he thrives on that. And I like that. So I liken BJ Adams to Kerry Williams, former, Ravens, Eagles corner, long, aggressive, active, feisty. But ultimately there's holes in his game, right? And we'll see if he finds the right defense. Again, not the biggest guy, 6'2", but 182 pounds, right? And you're going to see a lot of that in this draft, just not a lot of bigger corners. And I always worry about guys that are smaller. You get bodied up at this next level by some of these big physical receivers. So that physical, nature of BJ Adams in college, that was cool against collegiate receivers. These pro receivers might not work on those guys. We'll see. He's my number 15 corner. Number 14 in this draft is Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane. 5'11", 197 pounds, ran a blazing 4.33 at the combine. And, I have a greater appreciation for Caleb Ransaw because of the player that I'm going to comp him to came into the league and had a excellent rookie season, and I didn't love him coming out. And so because they're so similar, when you watch Caleb Ransaw, the first guy that popped into my head was Drew Phillips of the New York Giants. Because this guy can play inside, this guy can play outside. He can run. He's extremely, it feels like he's extremely raw, Ransaw is. But then when you watch him, his ability to tackle, boy, because he might be one of the best tackling corners in this entire draft. He will mix it up in there. Inside, outside, I think he's better suited to be a nickel, right? That's when he looks like he's his most comfortable. They blitzed him off the edge. He's a short tackler. He's a guy that does a good job in running chase situations. Only one interception, though, so not a lot of ball production. Again, it reminds me a lot of Drew Phillips coming out of Kentucky last year. But what his strength is just getting guys on the ground, right? Being sticky in coverage underneath, running with people. I don't think he does a great job of locating the football, hence the one interception, but he's always in the right position. He just doesn't find the football a ton, right? So I think that if he can clean up some of the technical things, obviously the athleticism is there, but half the battle is having the ability to do so, right? Which he has the ability to run. He has the ability to tackle. He has the traits you're looking for. And then the other half is want to, and he wants to tackle, and he can tackle. And now can he clean up some of those deficiencies, and maybe he becomes a star nickel at the next level. Right now, he's my 14th best corner. And again, I don't love his game, but I didn't love Drew Phillips' game last year. And then Drew Phillips came in and was a tackling machine, right? Wasn't the greatest in coverage, but he was excellent as a tackler, got guys on the ground. And I see that for Caleb Ransaw immediately coming into the league, right? So if nothing else, he'll be able to help you on special teams right away. So he's my number 14 corner. You go to my next corner, number 13 in this year's draft class. It's Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech. 6'1", 185 pounds, ran a 4.5 flat at the combine. He is a guy that you want to talk about high-level competitor. Dorian Strong is exactly that. He'll get in there. He'll mix it up with you. He'll press you at the line of scrimmage. He'll put his hands on you. He's a guy that stays connected to receivers. I feel like you can tell that he's not the fastest guy in the world because when guys get on top of him, he struggles to make up that ground. So that's what I worry about with him as you get further and further away from the line of scrimmage. And if he doesn't win initially at the line of scrimmage, if he isn't able to disrupt that receiver at the line of scrimmage, his transitions aren't the cleanest. So he loses a step a lot of times through his transitions. And once that receiver is able to stack him and get on top of him, it's tough for him to get back into play unless it's a poor throw, right? Unless it's a poorly thrown football. But I love his competitive spirit. The thing about him is, and again, this is a gift and a curse. You can't tell him that he's not fast enough to get in your face and press you, right? He wants to get in your face and delete the airspace because he's ultra confident that he can cover you. Sometimes you got to find out the hard way that this ain't that type of party. No, you can't cover me, right? Because I can get vertical on you and you can't keep up. But you can't tell him that, right? You might beat him and he's like, all right, bet. I know what I did wrong that time. I'm going to come back and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to get in your face. And this time I'm going to make the correction and I'm going to cover you. And it might just be a physical thing. You physically cannot run with me, but you can't tell him that. And it reminds me so much of a guy that I'm comparing him to in Bashaud Breeland, right? Who was not the fleetest of foot, was not the fastest corner, the most physically imposing corner, but you couldn't tell him that he couldn't get in your face and press you and that he couldn't run with you. And, in certain instances when he was playing bigger receivers that he could cover, it went well for him, right? Then when he was covering guys like Antonio Brown, it didn't go so well for him. So I see a lot of that in Dorian Strong. 7 interceptions in his career. So he's a guy that can absolutely take it away. Did have a fractured thumb in 2022, missed half of the season there, something just to note. But he's a guy that I like in this draft. If you asked me who could end up being a really good corner of this draft class that's kind of lower rated, I tell you it's Dorian Strong, of that back end of guys. I think Dorian Strong has a chance to find his way into the league, find his way onto a roster, find his way onto the field, and end up finding his way to a Pro Bowl. I could see that happening with a guy like Dorian Strong. He's my 13th rated corner in this draft. Checking in at number 12 is Western Michigan's Bilal Kone. 6'1", 190 pounds, ran a 4.43 at the scouting combine. This is another one of these taller, kind of longer corners. He's a little bit leggy. His transitions are a little clunky. It doesn't always look clean, right? But it's effective. I like his physicality. He'll come up, he'll tackle, he'll be aggressive at the line of scrimmage. Again, I think his ball skills are good. I think they could be better, but he had 5 career interceptions, so not tripping about that. But he's another one of these dudes, a little bit handsy down the field. I don't think he finds it as well as he should down the field, but another one of these guys that does a good job at the line of scrimmage of being physical, disrupting the route, staying connected. Again, he could do a better job of finding the football, right? I worry about his hands down the field a little bit, and sometimes it's unnecessary. He's in great position. You don't have to do that. But I see a lot of good traits in Bilal Kone. I really do. And he's another one of these guys that if he fully develops, he could be a really good corner in this league, but you just don't know, right? And so I liken him to L'Jarius Sneed. I looked at him and I said, damn, I see L'Jarius Sneed. Now the question is, can he develop the way that L'Jarius Sneed did in the NFL? Remember, L'Jarius Sneed was not a highly drafted, player. I think he was a 5th round pick, if I'm not mistaken, was L'Jarius Sneed coming out and turned into this stud corner. Can Bilal Kone do something similar? Because I think he has similar traits and a similar skill set to that of L'Jarius Sneed. He looks a lot like him. So he's my number 12 corner in this draft. You go to number 11, and this is a guy that I think a lot of people are very intrigued by. I would say he's the Dante Thornton Jr. of the cornerback position, right? A lot of people are interested and intrigued by Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee. I think a lot of people are really intrigued by Darian Porter, a cornerback out of Iowa State, 6'3", 195 pounds, ran a lightning fast 4.3 flat at the combine. This is a guy that is so multifaceted. Look, he's been in college for 6 years, I believe, right? Started out as a wide receiver, transitioned over to cornerback these last 2 years. And you can see that there's a little bit of receiver still left in him from a tackling standpoint, but he will tackle, right? Like he can get it done on special teams, and that may be how he initially impacts, an NFL roster is on special teams. He can be a gunner. He can go down there and make a tackle. This man has blocked 5 kicks in his career, including 2 this past year. He's blocked a kick in each of the last 4 seasons. So he brings other things to the table. But if we're just talking about his ability to play corner, the fact he has 3 career interceptions, the fact that he was a receiver in his, previous position, translates well. And so when he does see the football, he does a good job of attacking it, but sometimes he doesn't find the football. And, obviously being a bigger, taller corner, transitions are a big thing. You watch him, move, and he's comfortable out there on the football field, moving around. I like a lot of the traits that he brings to the table: tall, long, fast. The physicality will come, I think, as he continues to play the position. Maybe he'll always, have that wide receiver, mentality as far as physicality is concerned. But when you watch him play, you see the makings of a guy that could be a big time player at the NFL level if he continues to grow and develop at the position. I think there's a chance for him to be really good. But again, much like a lot of these corners, it's going to take some developing, right? If that happens, we could be talking about a Pro Bowl caliber corner. If it doesn't, he could be out of the league in 5 years, right? 4 or 5 years, So we'll see what that looks like for Darian Porter, but he's a very intriguing player, one of the more intriguing players in this draft. And I liken him to Ahkello Witherspoon coming out of Colorado. They like the exact same size almost. I remember Ahkello's biggest issue was what did he want to tackle? And I think Darian Porter is a much more, willing tackler than that of Ahkello Witherspoon, but their games to me are eerily similar when he was coming out. And Ahkello Witherspoon is actually turned into a solid NFL corner. And so I'm thinking Darian Porter may be able to do that and exceed that if he continues to grow at the position. So he's my number 11 corner in this draft. Checking in at number 10 is Kansas State's Jacob Parrish. 5'10", 191 pounds, ran a 4.35 40 at the combine. 5 career interceptions for him, so he does have ball production. He is a guy that played inside and outside while at K-State. But, obviously when you're 5'10", the inclination is to stick you inside and let you see if you can get it done as a nickel before we give you a chance to play outside as a boundary corner. But I think he's one of those guys that may defy that at the NFL level and end up being like a DJ Reed type guy where you can play him outside. But we'll see, right, where he ultimately plays. Just having that versatility is never a bad thing. He's a willing tackler, a guy that will get you on the ground despite his size. One of the things I worry about with him is he doesn't have the longest arms, and you see it on tape, man. He is constantly in the right position. He's constantly going after the football, but it just feels like he's super tiny, right? And his arms don't do him any favors. And so he's jumping and he's right there. And, a guy that's 6'2" or 6'3", and he's battling, right? He's scrapping. I'm watching him go up against 6'3" and 6'4" receivers, and he's right there. But if a guy's 6'3" and he's in good position and he attacks the football, there's only so much Jacob Parrish can do. And so that's the hesitancy to put him outside, because I watched him compete at a high level against guys that had size at the receiver position, but those guys weren't as skilled, and you could tell. You get to the NFL level and it's going to be a lot tougher to defend a Mike Evans with a Jacob Parrish. He's going to get, abused by bigger receivers that are way more physical, that are taller, that have, bigger catch radiuses. He's going to struggle in that aspect, but I like him as a blitzer. I like him as a guy down around the line of scrimmage that can be disruptive. I like his eyes. Again, a lot of these corners, boy, they key football very well. They jump on routes. They see route combinations. They recognize what's going on. He's one of those guys that does that, hence the 5 interceptions. I liken him to another undersized corner that had to essentially make his way in the NFL, was undrafted, and ended up being a self-made man, and that's Jonathan Jones, now of the Commanders, formerly of the New England Patriots, out of Auburn. And I watched a lot of his tape here recently because of him going to the Commanders, but their games are very similar. And I've watched Jonathan Jones compete at a high level despite being an undersized corner, inside and outside in his career. And I could see Jacob Parrish being another one of those types of players as well. He does not back down or shy away from a challenge despite his size. Checking in at number 9 is Florida State corner Azariah Thomas. 6'1 and a half, 197 pounds, ran a 4.58 40 at the combine. That may scare some people and turn them away. Only 2 interceptions in his career. That's another number that may be problematic for some people. And there's really not a lot of starts for this guy. So when you watch him and you see what he is, you realize that there's a lot of upside here. Willing tackler, a guy that will mix it up there, a guy that I think does a really good job underneath as a corner, playing off in zone. I think that's when he's at his best, even though he doesn't have the ability to click and close like some of these corners do. So playing off isn't always the best thing. But if in order to keep everything in front of you, he probably needs to do that. When he gets up in your face, deletes the airspace, he wants to be disruptive, and he can be. But again, he doesn't have the makeup speed if he were to get beat off the line of scrimmage. So that's also something to keep in mind with him. But again, he's another one of these guys that in that first and second level, right? That short to intermediate level, I think he can be a highly effective corner. It's once he starts getting to that third level and having to open up and run that become very concerned with his ability to keep up with some of these burners at the receiver position. But make no mistake about it, um, I think this is a guy that has a chance if he can, if a team can figure out what the best usage of him is going to be, put him in those positions. This isn't a guy that you want playing a whole bunch of man coverage. I think this is a guy that you want to be in some sort of zone, right? Whether you're playing, cover two, you're playing cover three, cover four, whatever the case may be. I think he could thrive in that type of a system. But if you're asking him to just line up in front of somebody and play a bunch of man, I think you're asking for trouble. Um, my comp for him is Josh Norman. I see a lot of Josh Norman in him. And remember, Josh Norman, his claim to fame was playing cover three, right? Wasn't the fastest guy in the world. He thought he could get up and press people and be effective in man, but he couldn't. But what he could do was he could always keep people from getting over the top of him, playing off and playing cover three and staying deeper than the deepest, wider than the widest. And I think Azariah Thomas may benefit from doing a little bit of that. And Josh Norman also made it. He made it his mission to poke the football free. Right? He perfected that peanut punch, and that was something that made him a really viable defender as well. I'm not saying Azariah Thomas does that right now, but you got to figure out a way to make yourself to maximize what you do. And Azariah Thomas has the size you're looking for at almost 6'2", 200 pounds. He has the physicality that you're looking for. And I actually think he can make plays on the football. I actually think he's got ball skills. It's just about him seeing the ball, right? That's why I think zone coverage may be the best for him. Then you check in at number 8, and this is one of my favorite corners of this entire draft class. And it's Noel Williams out of Cal. 6 feet, 199 pounds, ran a 4.5 flat. Just tremendous ball production, and people can get mesmerized by ball production. It's one of the easiest things to see with the corner. 14 interceptions is eye-popping, but that's not everything. And as a Commanders fan, I can tell you that firsthand, having seen them draft a guy in the first round who had like 16 career interceptions and like 5 or 6 of them going for touchdowns, and you can get caught up in ball production and lose sight of, is this guy actually a really good corner or not? All right. With Noel Williams, I actually think he is a good corner. Again, I think his eyes are tremendous. And a lot of these guys, a lot of the ball production guys have tremendous eyes. They see it, they trust it, and they go get it, right? And he's one of those guys that can do that. Again, the 4.5 is, not necessarily ideal. He's not slow, but that's not the kind of speed that you feel like is, necessarily sustainable at the NFL level. But then you see some of his traits and you see other guys that play the same kind of way that he does, and they are thriving in the NFL right now. You say, Noel Williams has a shot to be really good in this league. And so he'll tackle, right? It's not consistent. I'd like him to be a little bit more consistent in that facet as a tackler, but he's willing and he can. Again, the ball production is tremendous. He does a really good job of staying in phase with receivers. I think that his transitions are a little slow, and that's where he gives up a little bit of space. But what he lacks in all of that, he makes up with taking good angles, being very disciplined, and again, keying quarterbacks' eyes, always finding the ball. So A lot of these guys will be in great position. They don't find the football. He finds the ball. He locates the football. He's always looking for the football. And again, that could be a gift and a curse, right? Because you can get beat on double moves. You can lose your luggage when you're always keying quarterback's eyes. He's one of those guys that should be carrying a route up the field, but he sees this out-breaking route because he's covering the clear out route. And instead of him running with that clear out, he'll break off and jump the out route, right? And it's a great play, but if the quarterback says, "Oh, you trying to pick this up," like if I see that on tape, I'm gonna take advantage of you. I'm gonna pump the out and I'm gonna go to the clear out, and now he's wide open up the sideline, right? And you'll see that with Noel, but in college you can get away with that kind of stuff, and so it'll be interesting to see what his transition into the NFL looks like. I liken him to a really good corner in the league right now in Jalen Johnson of the Chicago Bears. Didn't run the fastest 40 coming out of Utah. A lot of people didn't, me included, didn't think that, that speed was going to allow him to be one of the premier corners in the NFL, but he's more than made up for it now. Jalen Johnson's arms are a little bit longer, so that does allow him to make up. And people, I think, at the cornerback position don't put enough stock into the length of arms, because that can make or break you, right? That could be the difference between you getting a piece of the football or that thing going right over your hands and into the hands of the receiver for a touchdown. And so if you're beat by a step, but you got long arms, like Nnamdi Asomugha was the best at this. He would be beat by a step, but he was so long, his arms were so long, it would allow him to get back into the play and make a play on the football and knock it away. And so Noel doesn't have the longest arms in the world. Like Jalen Johnson has really long arms. But I think Noel Williams has a chance to be a really good corner in this league. Again, we'll see how he continues to develop and where he goes and what kind of scheme he's being placed into. So those are corners 15 through 8. Just to recap real quick, UCF's BJ Adams is 15. Number 14 is Tulane's Caleb Ransaw. 13, Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech. 12 is Bilal Kone out of Western Michigan. Number 11 is Dorian Porter out of Iowa State. Number 10 is Jacob Parrish out of K-State. Number 9 is Azariah Thomas out of Florida State. And number 8 is Noel Williams out of Cal. So I will come back tomorrow with numbers 7 through 1. And then we will wrap up the cornerback position and move on to the defensive line, defensive tackles in particular. But in any event, that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys the next time. Until then, you guys have a good one. Take care. Happy Easter.
LouieTeeNetwork.